Hello, everyone. How are you? Thank you for joining us for this special edition of the Resilience Project. If you are watching this for the first time and you're unfamiliar with who I am, my name is Penda James, and I am a scribe coach. And this is the Resilience Project, which is an opportunity for me to talk to people that I care about so that I can gather tools for leaders. There was a season in my life where I lost my voice and forgot how to bounce back. And I needed to get back into circles of people who could remind me about their bounce back story so that I could speak my own. Today, I am talking to my aunt. Her name is Roz, so I call her Aunt Roz, but her name is Rosalyn Goodwin. She's also Lady Rosalyn Goodwin because she's married to a pastor. So I could tell you so many things about her, so many stories about her. She is my mom's youngest sister, and she was most recently the caregiver for my grandmother. She cared for her for 7 years and 5 years in her home until she passed this year on March the 6th, 2021. The reason why we're having this conversation today, this declaration, I am a caregiver, it really just fell on my heart really heavy today. I want Aunt Roz to tell you her story because we are, as a family, doing everything that we can to get my Aunt Roz's only living sister home to Ohio. She's currently in California and had a massive stroke while visiting some friends. She just went to go visit, and around Thanksgiving, she just passed out and had a massive stroke, and it has changed her life. So we need to get her home, get her closer to us. So I know I just jumped all into the conversation. I'm trying to introduce you, Aunt Roz. She's a mom, she's a grandmother. I mean, a nana. You're a nana. You don't want to be called grandma. She's a nana. And she's a great aunt. I mean, what else do you want the people to know about you, Aunt Roz?
Well, I think first and foremost, before I was a caregiver, I was a woman who loved the Lord. And so I think it's just important for people to know that because you'll hear my faith, the level of my faith and my relationship with God. You'll hear that throughout my dialogue with you this afternoon.
Yes. So what I would like for you all to do is please share, comment, because the more eyes that we have on Aunt Roz's story, our hope is the more that people will sow into the blessing to get our aunt home. My aunt, it's her sister, home. So Aunt Roz, my first question for you is, could you define what it means to be a caregiver?
Well, I can answer that question, but first I just want to say I'm just so very proud of you. You're my oldest niece, and I'm just so proud of the fact that you're walking in your gifting and sharing your gift with the world to make a difference through this resilience project. So kudos to you. Wonderful and outstanding work that you're doing.
Thanks, Auntie.
To answer your question, how do I define or what does it mean to be a caregiver? I think, if people are in the social service or the healthcare world, they're familiar with the acronym ADL. And what ADL stands for is activities of daily living. And this consists of personal hygiene, cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping, paying bills, all those things that the majority of us it just comes second nature for us. But there comes a point in time in our lives where we need help with those things. And that's what a caregiver does. They care and they help those who cannot perform the basic activities of daily living. Now, on a more personal note, what does it mean to be a caregiver? It's not a glamorous thing. It is not for the faint at heart. It is truly an honor, I believe, to be chosen by God to be a caregiver for a loved one. And, people work in the caregiver field, but obviously, in this conversation, I'm going to be talking from the perspective of a caregiver for a loved one. And so for me, it has been an honor to caregive for my sweet mother, your grandmother, and for my sister, your aunt.
How has being a caregiver been a thread throughout your life?
Caregiving has been a thread throughout my life. I think I'd have to first begin with the fact that when I was 10 years old, I had this vision uh, from the Lord that I would take care of my parents when they got older. In fact, I told them that my parents, along with my godparents at the time, and I was pretty confident about that. I never had any inkling what that would look like or what it would consist of. I just knew in my heart that it was something that I was going to do. So as I grew older in my faith and learned about spiritual giftings and learned what my spiritual gifts are, it just so happens that helps and service is my most dominant gift. And so that's why I find so much joy in doing it for my family. And then currently caring for my sister, I find joy in it as well too. I'm the younger sister, and sometimes that's the way life is, that things are kind of flip-flopped. And here I am, the younger sister, taking care of my older sister. But I find, once again, great joy in doing that for her.
So that's a testament of yours that for faith and for restoration and courage and love, those are the four pillars of the Resilience Project. Those were the four areas in my life that I recognized I was kind of lacking, and so each of these chats falls into one of those areas. And so in my description, I said I needed to lean on all four posts today. And I want you, if you feel comfortable, to talk about how restoration has been a part of your caregiver journey.
Well, I think I know what you're referring to. Are you referring to the relationship?
However you want to answer.
Well, I would say when I think of restoration in context of caregiving, and caregiving more or less for my sister is what resonates with me. And so one of the things about having strokes is that we have to understand, especially if it's a bleed on the brain, that it kills those cells in the brain. And so my sister, my surviving sister, has had numerous small strokes well over the past 10 years. And so each time an incident, a stroke incident occurred, um, it took away the sister that I knew, that I grew up with, that was my protector, that was my teacher, um, and who loved me unconditionally. It took that sister away from me, and she began to display some of the behaviors of being suspicious, being paranoid, um, and just being forgetful and blaming others. And so, I fell victim to these things, these unfortunate thoughts that she was having in her head concerning me. And I actually sought some counseling from NAMI, the National Association of Mental Illness, to help me learn more about mental illness and how to try to better communicate and help my sister. And unfortunately, there was no reasoning with her. However, um, I believe through this last incident, um, whatever generated those feelings of bitterness or whatever she was thinking towards me, I would like to believe that God has erased all that, and I'm pretty confident in that, in the way that she welcomed me
Yeah.
when I arrived here in California. It's been a week now to help fill that caregiver gap for her. And I think it's just so important for people to know. I think I might be getting ahead of myself. I'll talk a little bit more about that after your next
Keep
question.
going. No, keep going. You're fine.
Well, we as a family have found ourselves in uh, a season where, the caregivers that were caring for my sister. And I think it's important too to understand a little bit more context, especially for me and the urgency that it is for me to get my only surviving sister back home to Toledo. Is that when she had her stroke in 2020, she had been here in California visiting. Um, for just a few months. And it was the week of Thanksgiving that she suffered this debilitating stroke. And during that time that she was here alone, because, COVID, we were in the midst of COVID at that particular time. And so it was very hurtful to know that my sister was in a hospital by herself, while I was in my home caring for my mother, your grandmother, um, through hospice care. So the last few months or years, couple years, have been exceptionally challenging for me. And but even during that time with my sister being here and visiting, her mindset was that. Um, she had moments where she just didn't want to talk to me. She didn't want to talk to our mother. And that was very, very painful, very painful to see someone that you love, have that type of feelings towards you. But, understanding mental health, mental illness, and how strokes can, cause these types of thinking, that's what I had to stand on and understand that this was really not my sister. Uh, this was someone who has had um, trauma to their brain and is not thinking clearly, not thinking soberly. So we find ourselves now in a position where the caregivers, which I'm in their wonderful home, just filled with love, as you can see, they are believers as well. And they are having their own family challenges, health challenges. And so they flew me here to California to help assist with the caregiving of my sister. And once again, I'm doing it with great joy. They had a bedroom ready and waiting for me, but instead, what I have personally chosen to do is sleep in the recliner bed next to my sister in her room, just to be close to her. That is still my heart's desire because I love my sister, and it's very, very important to me that we get her back to Toledo, where um, she can be closer to family, to our Dayton family, to her friends in Toledo, but more importantly, be closer to me, so that I can see about her and make sure that she's taken care of and all her needs are being met.
So I wanted to have this conversation today. It just kind of came out of, just we were talking and I was like, let's just do the Resilience Project today. I think that you are walking in a lot of faith. And can you just talk a little bit about, as a leader, as a woman in leadership, as a woman who has been a caregiver, and not only were you a caregiver, we lost grandma, and then right after that, it was like, okay, now we need to create a new arrangement for Aunt Avie. So it was like grief on top of grief on top of grief, and so can you just give a word of encouragement to a caregiver who's out there that may just need a fresh rhema word to keep going?
Yes. I think the first thing that's important to understand is that the same way that you chose me to be a part of this dialogue today, God chooses us to be caregivers. And what I have found along this journey of caregiving is that there's always one. There's always one in every family. And there's always one that the majority of the weight and the burden is cast upon. And so for me and my family, I just happen to be that one. And so if there's anyone out there who's listening and that sounds like you, embrace the fact that you're the one, that God has chosen you to be the caregiver in your family. And what I'm also learning is that, when God chooses us to do something, that means He's really equipped us. What we require to fulfill being a caregiver is really deep down on the inside of us. And it's our relationship and our faith with God that just allows those gifts to just resonate and bubble up to the top of our being to be able to walk out and fulfill what God has called us to do. So the other thing, um, to any caregivers that might be listening, it's important to understand that it only lasts for a season. And that is something that the Lord had spoken very vividly to me in the beginning, because I have been a woman who has, like a lot of women, juggle a lot of things. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm an aunt. In my local community, I'm a service coordinator for a public housing complex for some wonderful seniors that I just absolutely love and need to get back to, by the way. I am a part of the executive leadership team at the Tabernacle Church in Toledo, and part of helping my husband to um, lead a church in Flint, Michigan. And so um, I'm a busy woman. I've got a lot of responsibility. But what the Lord showed me is that during my caregiving of my mother, is that I needed to live in the moment, rather than busying myself with everything else. It's a season where God wants you to live in the moment and focus on the main thing and keep the main thing the main thing. And so, that meant laying aside some responsibilities and, um, handing off some responsibilities to other individuals equipped, in my ministries. And so it's just for a season. It's just for a season. And I think if we know at the end of the day, the same way that, God chose me to be a part of this dialogue, once again, God has chosen each and every one of us who are in caregiver roles. God has called us into those roles. And just so, it's important to embrace it. I think, if we seek, we will find. And if we ask, answers will be provided. And so it's important to know that we should ask for help as well, too. There was a point in my caregiving with my mother that I was cutting the grass, I was shoveling the snow, I was paying her bills, I was cleaning her house, and then I was cleaning my house, taking care of my house, and doing all those other things I mentioned. And so, I finally had some very, very close friends look at me and tell me that I needed to not think about, but be more intentional about my own self care, and that I needed to step away from what I was doing and go home and sleep in my own bed. Because there was a point in time I was staying with my mother, and my sister was actually in the home at that time with her challenges. So, that kind of leads into, the self-care piece of being a caregiver, just being any, um, no matter what you have been called to do. It's self-care is just so very important. So, something simple as a bubble bath, if you can't get away or get out of the house, but if you can get out of the house, manicures, pedicures, massages, go for a walk, for a bike ride. Um, and as my girl, Sarah Jakes Roberts says, drink your water, stay hydrated, because we have to be concerned about, um, our own bodies, and being able to stay healthy, to be able to care and do those things that God has called us to do. And then, the last, which is always really first, is time with God, time in worship, um, time in the Word. One thing I've learned about worship music is music ministers to the depths of our soul, where our emotions are, and the Word of God ministers to the spirit man uh, that resides in us. So these things are so very, very key. And just I've been very fortunate to have spirit-filled nieces like you. Um, I've been fortunate to have children that I've raised up in the admonition of the Lord, and I have found them encouraging and praying with me in these times. But just surrounding yourself with those who can help hold your head up, and hold your arms up during times like these. And so, another thing that I would really encourage current caregivers to do with their loved ones is take selfies, uh, take pictures, um, take little mini videos, you know, um, because at the end of the journey, after you've helped walk them um, to the end of their journey, um, those videos and hearing their voices will just be absolutely priceless gifts that you can give yourself. And so um, that just kind of is all wrapped up in the fact that it's so important to just embrace the moment and live in the moment with your loved one.
Do not cry, Penda James. um, so there's a couple things that I want to say to families who may be watching. I am the oldest of my mother's children, and I am the oldest of my grandmother's grandchildren. And I'm coming close to the age where my mother and Aunt Avie had a stroke on the same day, a year apart from each other. And so in this last season where Aunt Avie had a stroke, Aunt Roz and I made a commitment to each other that we would take care of ourselves. We both have hypertension, and so it runs in the bloodline. Strokes, hypertension, all of these things. And so I want to say to families, understand what the underlying issues are in your family, and they don't have to become your reality as long as you take care of your temple. And as long as you're intentional. If I sit and eat potato chips all the time, I'm destined to have a stroke. And so I have to be intentional so that I don't walk that same path, so that my younger sister is not having to care for me in the way that Aunt Roz is having to care for Aunt Avie. It is so hard to see that as a possibility, but I'm grateful to see it as a possibility, if that makes sense. Because if I was walking blindly in how I could be living recklessly, I would never know that that is a possibility for me.
Right.
So I want to say, to families, if you know that there are genetic things happening in your family, pay attention to them and
Yes.
protect yourself, protect your heart from them. And then I also wanted to say, I am not the caregiver. I mean, I wasn't called. That wasn't my calling. I get too emotional and too, I just can't. It's not me. In my family, it's my sister. She's the one. She's the one who has been there for the loss of my mother, both my grandmothers. Like I cannot handle it. I still think about how strong and how intentional you have to be in those moments. And so God gifted me in other areas and to help people tell their story so that they can keep doing the things that they're doing. And so I recognize my gift and I stay in my lane because I was not called. But I do pray. I pray for Aunt Roz. I pray for all the caregivers out there in so many different ways. We could be caring, we're caring for children, we're caring for parents, and there's all kinds of ways that people caregive. This is just Aunt Roz's story of how she's been called to care. Aunt Roz, is there anything else that you want to say before we close?
Yes, I do just want to reiterate, well, actually, we didn't really talk too much about it, but as a family, we have established a GoFundMe fundraiser. And I just think it's important for people to know that because of Avalyn's condition, the best means of transportation to meet her needs is a medical flight because she is currently bedbound. She has a feeding tube and she needs special attention. She needs 24-hour care. She cannot meet any of those activities of daily living for herself at this time. And so, I know that there's been some dialogue about, there's some opportunities out there that cost much less because, the bill for this medical flight, the most feasible one is $20,000. That's the most feasible that I've been able to find. And I just want everybody to know, I am exceptionally proactive. Those who know me, that are close to me, I have done my due diligence for the past couple of weeks. I've been researching medical flights. I've been researching, were there ways to just get her on a regular commercial flight with an escort. But unfortunately, based on her needs, the medical flight is what meets all of her needs and would actually take only for less than 5 hours travel time, whereas any other mode of transportation would just absolutely take too long in the condition that she is in. I am here. I am here in California, once again, filling in the caregiver gap for my sister. And not only do I need to get her home, but I need to get back home. My seniors that I care for, and more importantly, my husband, I need to get back to my life in Toledo. And so I am just, once again, standing on God's word and leaning upon his promises that he will move upon people that we know, people that we don't even know, that will have a heart of compassion to just help us accomplish this goal in getting Avalyn back to Toledo. So My intentions are to be here and continue to fill in that caregiver gap until we get the money to pay for the flight. And once again, it's $20,000. And the last I checked, we were right around 7,000 earlier today. And so that's a bit of a ways from 20,000. So not only have we done the GoFundMe, which by the way, if you go to gofundme.com, the name of the fundraiser is Avie's Medical Flight to Toledo. So if you go to gofundme.com, the name of the fundraiser is Avie's Medical Flight Home. And I'm just trying to see here very quickly if I can, where we are number-wise.
And I did put a link into the comments for anyone who is watching. You can help us if you share this video so you can hear Aunt Avie's story, hear Aunt Roz's testimony about caregiving. It will inspire and encourage other caregivers, and it'll also get eyes on the GoFundMe and on Aunt Avie's story, our family's story. So it is in the comments. Take a look at it, share it. You never know who you know that might be moved to sow into this.
That's right. We all have influence, especially amongst, our own peers. And so I think that's just so important for people to know that everybody knows somebody that they can just say, hey, this is a really great cause. You need to support it. And that's what I'm encouraging people to do, to please donate and please encourage those whom you have influence with to please do the same.
Yes. Thank you, Aunt Roz. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you about your faith or love, courage, or restoration that you want to share before I let you go?
Well, one thing about caregiving is, not only is it not glamorous, but you have days where you are physically, mentally, and emotionally expended. And it is my faith, my time of worship that has me standing on my 2 feet still. Sometimes I don't even know, how I'm doing it all, but I do know it's only by the grace of God and by the prayers of my dear friends who are holding me up in prayer. So I do want to say this one last thing right now. Today is, I think we're like the 5th day into, we're the 5th day into this GoFundMe, and we're at $7,400. So we're quite a ways from 20,000. I'm really hoping and believing that those of you who are listening will help us get my sister on this plane in the next couple weeks, not only for her benefit, but for mine as well too. I am here to help to fly with her on that flight. And there will be a nurse and a paramedic on there as well. And what else is also included in that 20,000 is there will be transportation provided from the home where we're located to the airport. And then once we arrive in Toledo Express, there will be transportation from that airport to where she'll be staying as well.
Well, thank you all for watching and for sharing and commenting. And if you have any ideas of ways that we can generate some other resources to get Aunt Avie home, feel free to reach out to us. You can send us a message on Facebook, or you can comment in this post. I mean, we are so open to the move of God. And I'm learning in this season to trust God differently, to walk with God differently. And so I thank you, Aunt Roz, for sharing your testimony. And we made it through without crying. You know, God has been just so faithful to our family, so faithful to us. And I thank you so much. And we thank you all for watching. We love you.
Thank you, everyone. God bless.